What's up, everybody? Welcome to Podcast Now. I'm Alex, and in this video, oh my dear lord, we have quite a few things to talk about. It was honestly Scream's Christmas, I guess, like yesterday. So what do we have? We have Scream 6, the script. This, to my knowledge, at least right now, is not with Sydney in it. So what we heard a few days ago about, the mention of Bailey saying we're going to go and fly, we're going to do some stuff to her and the family, that's in this, right? But this is not like if Sydney was actually in the movie for 5-6 minutes, whatever. That's not this script. So we got that. I want to talk about two things in particular that's going around the Scream fandom. Throw my opinion in. You guys know sometimes I'm with the Scream fans. Sometimes I'm violently opposed to what they're saying. And then the second thing is the Scream 3, what do you want to call it, uncut version? The, oh my God, 3+ hours worth of footage. I haven't watched it all, okay? But I've seen some of the bigger clips going around. Again, I got some general opinions of that as well, talking about one, I guess, in particular scene. Let's start with Scream 6, and there's, again, two things we got to talk about. Well, really, let's throw in one third thing, one kind of bonus thing, and that's the Kirby being married thing. So we had heard about this back in, I think, like March or April. There was an interview where they actually talked about this scene, that they had filmed it, they actually really liked it, but they decided to take it out, and they had said that of all the things that were cut, this is like the only thing that kind of had value that they would almost fight. They wouldn't fight, basically, for anything else to be in the movie. This one was kind of a tough decision. It was basically that Kirby was married. Kirby was married, and then she got divorced, and one and done, right? It was a one and done situation. She's not going to ever do that again. And kind of a back and forth with Bailey. I think I could have, had that. And we talked about this last time, right? Some of these script changes, not all of them, needed to be in the movie. Some of them would obviously enhance it. Some of them wouldn't. This would be a scene, I guess more of Kirby the better. I think, again, Hayden did such a good job. And, we've talked a lot about Kirby on this channel, that they used her way more than I thought they would. And I was very pleasantly surprised with that. And I thought she absolutely crushed it. And I very much hope that she keeps coming back for Scream movies going forward. And you could even maybe play around with taking her out if you really, really wanted to. We'll discuss that some other time. All right, they cut two Gale things, and this is very odd. And I think to center it on that is actually kind of important, because one of it is a Gale and Sam back and forth. We're going to read it out, but it's a Gale and Sam back and forth. And then the other one is the Gale and Ghostface fight, right? More stuff there. We had talked a little bit about that in the last video, right? That it was kind of a one-on-one match. They'd be spinning at each other. There'd be blood everywhere. They'd be punching each other, that thing. Well, there were some lines that Gale had said there that I really don't understand why they cut them, but there's a little bit more to that. Let's talk about the Sam and Gale back and forth. And this is, again, when they're talking about their mom and this kind of the loner kind of mentality that they got to stick together, right? That whole, which I thought was a great scene. It helps Sam's character. It was one of Gale's really only scenes in the movie. It was a really powerful scene. Well, in this scene, they talk about Sydney. Now, I'm going to actually say this first before I read it. I'm actually glad they didn't have this in. And I'll leave it there. I'll explain why once we read it. But I'm going to tell you right now, I actually understand why it's not in the movie, and I actually think it's for the best that it's not in the movie. So let's read what the lines of dialogue are. So Sam says, "Not really. Ever since I came back into her life, I've made a mess of it." Gale says, "Life's messy." Sam looks up to Gale. "Back when Sydney survived, everyone embraced her. When I survived, they hated me because I'm not the good girl. I'm not Sydney Prescott. People prefer me as the villain." And Gale says, "Sam, I know this from experience. Comparing yourself to Sydney is not a good use of your time. And besides, you're more like me anyway." And then Sam says, "And that's a good thing." Gale smiles at the jab. "Yeah, it is. We may be the loners, but it's made us tough." And then Sam says, "That's the thing about loners, though. They get lonely." And then they go into the conversation that they had in the movie. So here's the thing. I think it's okay dialogue. I could see it, easily, and I think they filmed it. Maybe not. The Gale fight thing with Ghostface, they definitely filmed that, and they took it out. This one, I guess we don't know for sure if they filmed it, and it's just out there somewhere, and we're never going to see it, or maybe this was just written, and they never actually filmed it. I'll tell you a couple of things. Why I think it makes sense it's not in the movie, and why I think it's not in the movie. This almost triples down on the idea of Sam being this outcast and villainized character. The entire theme of her character in that movie, in Scream 6, was that. And I thought, again, I haven't seen the movie since it came out, or I saw it twice in theaters, and that's it. I'm going to watch it next month. Maybe my opinions have changed, but my recollection of it, I loved what they did with Sam. I loved the theme. I loved the idea that they're kind of like all out to get her, right? The internet has villainified, whatever you want to say, right? Like she is the villain, and how she deals with that, it's honestly like very sad, like to see, like you really feel for her. I think that was the best thing you could have done for her character, because I really think it made us care. Plus, I think Melissa Barrera did such a much better job acting than she did in Scream 5. I think Sam was a more well-written character in this. Plus that backdrop of like you feel for this character. This character already kind of has this thing going on with the internet and stuff that you can like understand. You kind of have her back, because very few people do. So that's the entire theme. This, I feel like, just kind of triples down on it where you don't need to do it. And also, I think the idea of you're not making Sydney a villain, but you're almost talking down to the Sidney Prescott character. Now, that's not like fully, but I could easily see people thinking that. Like when I read it, the very first time I read it, I was kind of thinking, if Sam said that in the movie, I don't think I actually would like. You know what I mean? It almost turns you off with liking her, or at least for me. I mean, I'm only speaking of my own opinion. If she were to say that kind of stuff, because again, it's like, it's things we already know. Like, she doesn't have to compare herself to Sydney and say, well, Sydney's the good girl, I'm the bad girl, and I'm the villain. People don't get me the way they got Sydney. You don't need to like put down Sydney to make Sam this victim, which she like all this stuff going on and Sam's in the middle of it. We already know that, so you don't have to put the best, like, in my opinion, the best character in Scream, my favorite character in Scream. You don't need to put that character down to kind of like understand Sam even more. It was just kind of unnecessary. So I actually get that. And that's just my interpretation of it. You don't have to agree with it. You could want to see it in the movie. That's fine. But I honestly think it would make me think less of Sam if she said that. And like if that was read and she looked at Gale with a straight face and she said that in the movie, I'd be like, well, you didn't really have to bring Sydney into like your personal drama. I know it's not your fault. Well, you did kill. I mean, like she did like kill Richie pretty brutally. She didn't have to do that. So like part of it's her fault. Most of it's not her fault. But you don't need to like drag Sydney down with you. So that's one thing. Second thing is the Gale and Ghostface fight. So this one's fascinating. So what we have is the fight that obviously happens, and Gale has a couple lines of dialogue. Now we're specifically focusing on those lines of dialogue because, well, number one, again, it's another Gale scene cut. Now, that entire thing is a Gale scene, but it's a specific, segment in her entire, scene that's not there. So, number one, it's like, do they have something out for Courtney Cox? It's like, why'd you cut? Again, like, she's not the sole person in either of those scenes. It's not like she's talking to the mirror to herself or anything, right? Like, she's with other people. But there's scenes that involve Gale, and it can be very much argued she's the main character of that scene, and you cut stuff. And it's like, that's pretty annoying that you're doing that to her. But at the same time, I guess another thing that's funny is the whole "if you have the guts" line, which historically and kind of iconically was cut from Scream 4 when she's about to be killed at the Stabathon, right? When she says, do it if you have the guts. She says almost the exact same line again, and they cut it again. And it's like, are we ever going to hear her say that line? Honestly, I think the answer is no. I think we should. Maybe third time's the charm, but let's read what she says. This one, I'm much more on the side of, you should have kept it. You should keep this line in. So let's read it. "You've been in my life so effing long. I made you and you made me." Ghostface just stares. Gale continued, "You want to try and finish this? Go ahead if you've got the guts." Now, the interesting thing, there's a lot interesting with it, but the interesting thing with this scene is there's a TV spot where Gale says part of each of those she says part of the first thing, part of the second thing. So that is actually, because again, like when this script came out and we started hearing rumors right a couple days ago, we had talked about, well, like actually a lot of people, not just me, we all had talked about, well, did they film things or was this just written and it never made it into, like the Bailey's talking about Sydney. I don't think that was actually recorded. Now, that's just my guess. I truly do not know, but I just think that. But this was actually filmed. So I don't know if they filmed the more, brutal attack stuff. There's no evidence that suggests the attack, what we read, right? She gets stabbed through the hand and certain things that are going on with her in that Ghostface fight. There's no firm evidence that they actually filmed that. But they did film these two lines. And these two lines, I believe, are right before. I think she gets like the final couple stabs, and then when Sam and Tara kind of come in. So if they filmed this, it is actually possible they filmed a somewhat more, it's already brutal. I want to give them that. I love the Gale phone call sequence. I've talked about it quite a bit. I like it. But it seems like there's even more to it that's more brutal, a little bit more negative towards Gale because she gets hurt even more, right? And it seems like that stuff was cut out. So, again, with the hand, by the way, like what is with them? Radio silence and I guess Scream in general. What is with them and stabbing people through the hand? I really just don't know. But I found that very interesting. I really would have liked to have seen that. Just as, again, more footage. I really can't give them an excuse for this one because it's like, they're kind of iconic lines. Like, I think it would have worked really well. They extend the movie by, what do you want to say, 30 seconds? Like, so could they not have extended it by 30? I don't know. Like, the Sam and Gale talk, right, about Sydney, you could also argue it's just too long. Like, the pacing of that conversation, it would get drawn out too much. You could argue that because it is a pretty okay amount of dialogue, and you imagine they're not talking, like, as fast as me, right? They're slowing it down a little bit. For something like this, that this cannot have been that much footage that was cut, and that they decided to cut it anyway. So, if there's anything else that comes with the Scream 6 script, if there's anything else that people kind of focus on, right, in like the Scream fandom, or let me know, like in the comments. I can definitely make more videos on it. Obviously, the Sydney script, we'll talk about it when it happens, whenever it does happen. I really quickly, though, want to talk about the Scream 3 thing. So, again, I watched some of it. I think my favorite scene that I've personally watched, I was going to say scene that I saw, but it's going to get tongue twisted, is the Sydney when she kind of gets found, right, when she's doing the help lines, and one specific line, which is the killer is just a dark reflection of the hero. That's really good. And that entire, like the Terminator analogy and stuff that's going on, there's some really cool, I guess, Roger lines, Ghostface lines, whatever you want to say. I know there's like Codden, obviously there's more there. There's some kind of interesting back and forth with like Sydney and Gale when they first see each other, and she hugs her and she says like, "Are you here to break Dewey's heart again?" And she's like, "Oh, that came out wrong. Like I didn't mean that." There's some kind of weird stuff, but I'll just say this as like a blanket statement. It's very, very cool to see. Like it's honestly very special. This, to me, is the worst Scream movie, okay? Now, you could argue Scream 5, and you could also argue, and I would say this out loud, worst does not mean, like, it's bad. Like, it's if I were to rank them in terms of things that I enjoy, I'd put this at the bottom. I did rewatch this film, like, maybe I made a video, I think, about it 3-4 months ago, and I liked it so much more than any of the other times I watched it. With that being said, I still do think it's the weakest one. Just my opinion. I will say, seeing new footage, just in general, by the way, seeing new footage for a Scream movie like this long after it's happened is really, like, rad. Like, it's really cool. It's really, really cool that the Scream fandom gets to see like new from a Wes Craven era, right? From Scream 3, which is like and always has been interesting film in the franchise, right? A very divisive one. Some people think it's the best, some people think it's the worst, right? Like it had to be that movie that got the additional footage, right? And we get to see it now, like years and years and years later, and quite a bit new footage is being shown. I think a lot of the things make sense that they're not in the movie. Again, you gotta remember too, like, was it all Wes's call? Probably not. You gotta remember Columbine just happened, so like, were there some decisions based off that? And obviously, like, we know about the history of Scream 3 in general, like, it was very, very messy, and there was just a lot of stuff going on, and rewrites, and then they made fun of that basically in the film. So, again, it's really cool to see something like that, modern day, on the film that's like the most divisive of them all. It feels like kind of fitting that happened. But I just want to talk about that one Sydney Ghostface scene where it's, 2.5 minutes long. Really good. And a lot of the scenes that I've seen, whether like they deserve to be in the movie or not, it's still cool to like finally, and that's engraved, right? Like we'll always now have that stuff, and that's super, super cool. So let me know what you guys think about either of these two things in the comments. Make sure, as always, you're subscribed, bell icon turned on, and I hope to see you all on the next Scream video.